Hey guys, welcome to Finish Awesome Friday for another week. So today is the third layer of the 3 layers of awesome, where we discuss obviously our diets and what we need to do to manipulate them to get the results we want. So looking over the last 2 weeks, obviously we discussed calorie balance on week 1. We talked about obviously eating more or less calories depending on the amount of activity you do to get the results you want, whether you want to gain weight, eating more calories obviously, lose weight, eating less calories than you work, or maintaining by eating the right amount of calories to the amount of effort that you're putting out. The next week we then discussed the macros, what those actual calories are made up of. So obviously we started again, starting from a maintenance level, starting from a balance, which is a third of each. And then from there you can make changes via either increasing or decreasing certain macros to get the results that you want. And again, it's very individual and it takes a bit of experimentation. So it's not really as important as the first stage, but it can make a little bit of a difference in terms of your results. Today we're going to discuss the final bit, which is your timings, okay, the type of diet you do and the supplements. Understand that this is the area where most people concentrate all their efforts on, when actually it's the least important of the three. This is just the fluff on top, okay? If you've got a good calorie balance and you're eating the right amount of sort of balanced macros and eating a good healthy source of those, this doesn't really matter. But I still will discuss it today because I feel it's an important aspect of diet and I feel people are interested in this area, so I thought I'd give my opinion on it. Whether you like that or not is up to you. So first and foremost, the most important thing to ensure is that you don't really fall into the victim of falling into any one side of any argument, okay? I put diet and training up there with politics and religion in terms of things that you should never discuss with other people. Simply put, people have their own ideas and agendas and they will either agree with you or they will be completely against your opinion. And if they agree with you, that's great. But at the end of the day, most people don't agree with each other. And if they don't agree with you, it causes a complete, ball-busting experience where you have to kind of explain yourself to people when you really shouldn't have to. Because the idea of a diet and the idea of training and the idea of all these other things is it's very much a personal thing. If you're going to stick to it in the long term for your, the rest of your life, then it's the right diet for you. But it may not be the right diet for someone else. So there's no point in discussing why your diet is superior to theirs or why the science that backs it up is more relevant to other people's. It really doesn't matter. So don't fall into a cult. Don't stand there and say that one thing is best and everything else is rubbish. Always experiment, always try new things, always use variance in your life. Okay, variety is the spice of life, as they say, and it's very much true in diet and nutrition. You should always ensure a variety of things from there. But we will discuss each one anyway, and we'll go into them, and I'll give you a little bit of my opinion, but again, it doesn't really matter, because if you want to do or follow this particular diet, then it's going to work for you. So keto's first. Keto is also been called the Atkins diet. I suppose most people might have known it back in the noughties. And basically the idea of it is that you're eating predominantly fats and proteins in your diet, and then obviously throwing in things like vegetables and things to get your carbohydrates in, but not really any sort of starchy carbohydrates. So you would obviously reduce your intake of bread and rice and pasta and all the sort of starchy carbohydrates from there, and potatoes obviously as well. The great thing about it, obviously the reason it works so well for people, is that it simply removes the food that people overconsume in their day-to-day lives, which is obviously carbohydrates. Okay, so obviously reducing that, most people have between 60 to 70% of their daily calories from carbohydrates. If you then say you can't have any carbohydrates and you have to just eat fats and proteins with some vegetables, then obviously it reduces a lot of people's choice, so that they can't have, just pick up something off of the shelf, or can't just simply make something really quickly. They have to sort of think about what they're going to do, and obviously it gets a lot of the increases their protein intake and increases their healthy fat intake as well, which is obviously an important thing to make sure people do in their diet. So it automatically does those things, so that's good. But obviously it's very restrictive because you can't have any carbohydrates. So again, you're restricting yourself from things, and if you generally restrict yourself from things, what normally will happen is eventually you'll either cave and give in and go the complete opposite direction, or you will be a convert and bore people to death with your stories of how ketogenic diet is the best thing in the world. So the way you've got to think about it is that the more you restrict yourself from doing something, the more you're likely to want to do that thing. So the easiest thing to do is not restrict yourself from carbohydrates. But if the ketogenic diet works for you, and if you're a strong opinion, if you're someone that doesn't control yourself very well under carbohydrates, it might be a very good thing to practice, at least for a short period of time, just to get an idea of what life is like without those carbohydrates, how your body feels and how it reacts to not having sugars pumped into its body every day. So it's a good diet to practice and maybe have a go at, but I wouldn't say it's the best diet in the world for that. Paleo is pretty similar, but the idea of paleo is that it's based on the caveman times, where if you can't pick it out of the ground or you couldn't kill it, then you shouldn't be eating it. So the idea is obviously, all fruits and vegetables are good, meats are good. You can look at things like maybe you can argue things like rice and things are quite natural products from the ground, so maybe you would eat rice, but maybe that would be a starvation from there. But basically the idea is that you control and only eat natural produce, which again is very good. You're not eating produced products, and thus you are healthier because you're eating a lot more healthy products. But the problem with it again is it's restricting you. If you go out with friends and there's you have to say no to certain desserts or something you might like or fancy or want to have. Again, if you're doing that, again, it's going to be that negative feeling with food, and it breeds a lot of negativity around certain foods over anything else. Again, if it's something that controls you and means that you can have a healthier, longer lifestyle and it suits your eating style, then great, knock yourself out of it. I would find it very restrictive, as I do like to eat cakes and brownies. So though I'm sure you can get paleo recipes now for cakes and brownies, but for me, I just like sugar, so I'm going to have a cake when I want to have a cake, and I don't care what our paleologic, the caveman time people did. For me, I'm living in the 21st century and I want choice because I've got choice. Next up is vegan. Now, this is not necessarily a dietary type. It's more, sort of a choice people make for either, moral reasons. Obviously, not wanting to promote the sort of the meat industry and everything else that comes from it from there. But sometimes, people just don't like eating meat or choose not to, eat dairy and meat because they don't like it. The idea of it really is that you will find natural, sort of vegetables and other sources like beans and things like that to get your proteins, to get your fats and get your carbohydrates from. It allows a lot of variance, and it's a great thing to introduce to your diet. And honestly, like finding vegan recipes and food choices could be great for a lot of people to do to kind of broaden their palate. But again, for me personally, it's too restrictive because I enjoy meat, I enjoy dairy, I enjoy those products from the animal side of things. Okay, whether that makes me an evil person or not, I don't know. But I show no intolerances to them, and therefore, I like to eat them. So to me, it's quite restrictive, but actually could offer a lot more choice and opportunity for people to do. So it's something that a lot of people are trying now and doing, and that's great. But and again, it can give you some days. You might have a vegan day or a vegan month or whatever you want to do, just to kind of get yourself away from the meat, get away from processed meats and all the rest of it, and get yourself sort of a more open idea of what you can do without meat, but or dairy. But for me, vegans or vegetarians, that they've got their reasons for doing it, and that's great. But that's not really what I'm interested in doing. So there's no real drawbacks to it, apart from that you have to find multiple sources of protein to get the same amount of essential amino acids as you would from meat. But if that's the only argument you've got, then as I say, knock yourself out with it. It's a valid diet type to go by. Intermittent fasting is probably the one I've done the most of. Okay, so I have done the warrior diet when I went from 15 stone down. Sorry, not 15 stone. When I went from 18 stone down to 14 stone, I used intermittent fasting. I used the warrior diet to get to that thing. And the idea of the warrior diet is that you fast. Basically, you don't eat anything for the majority of the day, 18 hours, and then for a small eating window, 4 or 5 hours of the day. Sorry, it'd be 20 hours then, wouldn't it? Not 18 hours. My maths is terrible today. So for 20 hours, I wouldn't eat. And then for 4 hours in the evening, I would allow myself to gorge out on food and have, a main meal and then maybe a dessert afterwards as well. The good thing about it was obviously it controlled my calories. Okay, I didn't have to count calories utilizing it. So when back then I didn't count calories, it seemed it was the magic pill for me. So it didn't allow me to eat calories through the day. I was only allowed a certain number of hours in the evening to eat calories. And even if I gorged out and went for a meal out and had 3 courses and all the trimmings and beer, I still wouldn't make up for all the calories that I managed to cut out through the rest of the week. So it's great in controlling calories in terms of that, but it's massively restrictive. Obviously, if I was hungry at midday, for example, I would have to wait 5 hours until I could eat something, and by then I'd be absolutely ravenous, and it would be but it teaches you a little bit about hunger. It teaches you those what real hunger is. But that's not necessarily a positive thing, especially for some people who don't deal very well with hunger and don't deal very well with that sort of that element of it. So though the intermittent fasting works very well, there are other variations. Obviously, there's the 16-8, which is very popular again. Lean gains again works on the same principle: 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating. You have the sort of the 24-hour fasts that people do, which again work very well. Again, I would recommend people try and implement some fasting into their diet. But just don't go full board with it. You don't have to go fast every day. There's no real massive benefits apart from the fact that obviously it fits well into some people's lifestyles. For me, for example, I still utilize intermittent fasting for a sense. What it taught me really was that I don't need to eat breakfast. I'm not very hungry in the morning. I'm normally starting to get hungry sort of about 10, 11 o'clock in the sort of late morning, early afternoon sort of time. So for me personally, I don't have breakfast. I wait until sort of lunchtime to start eating my first meal of the day. And again, that's just because my body likes that style of eating. And if I didn't try it, I wouldn't have discovered that. So that's why I would recommend people maybe have a go at it. You never know what it might do for your diet and your sort of the way you feel. But it's not the answer either. And then the last one is if it fits your macros. Now this one is also termed flexible dieting. The funny thing with Fitch Macros is that what it actually is the most free of all diets. It allows you to choose how you eat, how you do things, as long as you fit your calories into the particular macronutrients that you set out. So for example, if I was to say you have a third of your calories from proteins, a third of your calories from carbs, and a third of your calories from fats, it will give you a certain number, okay, or obviously, how many grams that can be. And then basically, as long as you hit those numbers, it doesn't matter if that is made up of, pizza, donuts, McDonald's, as long as you hit your macros, the idea is that you'll get the same results from there. Now, obviously, the funny thing of that is that I've utilized those three things, but the funny thing is that's what people criticize it with, is saying that you eat a load of crap and you don't eat good food. But that's completely against not true, and also completely against the whole idea of it. The idea is that you eat healthily and you do all the right things, okay, but you're allowed much more freedom. If you fancy a donut, you can have a donut as long as it fits your macros. If you want to have a meal out with friends, then that's absolutely fine. You don't have to hold back or restrict yourself from certain things on the menu, as long as it fits your macros. So again, the freedom, there is more freedom there, but there's still a restriction there, because if it fits your macros, it has to fit those macros for this system to work, apparently. So again, it can be very controlling, and a little bit more controlling than it needs to be. The way I like to do it is very much on a freedom base, that as long as I'm pretty much getting my protein in, my fats and carbohydrates will be about a third each, but some days I might have more fats, some days I might have more carbohydrates, and that's just the way it rolls with me. So this still is a bit too restrictive, but it's probably the most free of all the popular diets that are out there at the moment. So as I say, have a play with it. See which one works for you. It's going to be a very individual thing, and that's what I was talking about at the start. If you try it, fits your macros, and you find it works for you, that's great. But it doesn't mean it's better than any of the other diets. It just means it works for you, and that is the most important thing when you're looking at a dietary type to follow. You need to find something you're going to do for the long term. So discussing timings, mostly with protein, the thing you want to be looking at doing is getting in some protein every 2 to 4 hours. It's not it's not like you're going to explode if you don't eat protein in 4 hours, and it's not like you're going to waste away and lose all your muscle if you don't do that. But it just gives you an opportunity to consume enough protein through the day. So if you're eating every sort of 4 hours and getting in between sort of 20 to 50 grams of protein, depending how much you've got to get in per day, then you should find that will allow you to get in sort of 5 or 6 meals through the day. And if you're getting 20 to 50 grams of protein through the day, you should hit the numbers quite happily. Okay. That is just, again, it doesn't mean you can't process more than 50 grams of protein. And it doesn't mean that, as I say, if you don't get in this 2 to 4 hour window, that bad things are going to happen to you. But it just gives you that opportunity to have some form of control over your day and a little bit of flexibility in there as well. In terms of carbohydrates, you want to make sure that you are getting in your carbohydrates around your training window, as we like to call it. Okay, so pre-workout, intra-workout, and post-workout are the three elements from there. So before your training, during training, and after training, you want to make sure that your carbohydrate intake is high glycemic, which means that obviously it causes your insulin levels to spike very quickly. That is good in terms of when you're pre, post, and during training. Obviously, you want to shuttle the nutrients into your body as quickly as possible. So having a high glycemic supplement, for example, or eating high glycemic food along with protein is going to be a good idea around that time, because it will shuttle it into into the muscles quicker and get it into the bloodstream quicker, so that you can obviously utilize the amino acids and take it from there. Around outside of that training window, okay, so if you're talking further away from it, you then would want to have more fibrous carbohydrates, because fiber actually slows down the digestive process and would mean obviously slows down the absorption of proteins as well. So it's better to have fiber based foods and carbohydrates away from your training window. Okay, so the further away you are from training, the more fibrous carbs you probably want to have at that stage. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of a guide in terms of that. In terms of fats, fats act very much like fiber, so it slows down the absorption of protein into the body. So again, you want to make sure that your fats are higher around the, sort of away from that training window. So obviously, that's why a lot of people like to sort of talk about reducing their carbs later at night. Obviously, then you can increase some fats from there, and it's not going to have too much of a detriment effect from there. That's why things like casein from dairy, dairy products obviously is a slow absorbing protein, and it's very much because of the fats slow down that absorption. So it's a good protein to have later and towards the night for a long fasted sleep, obviously from there. But that's generally it. That, as I say, is the fluff on top. You don't have to get too involved with that, but that will give you a kind of guideline of how to use your macronutrients from there. So the final thing I want to talk about is obviously the supplements. Most people don't generally need supplements. It's not a case of needing though. It's a case of, as I say, just getting that little bit of extra on top. So first and foremost, my top 5, and again, it's just my opinion, so you might find there's other ones taken up from there, but you don't generally need any of these as long as you're getting in enough, enough calories from your diet, okay, all the right sources as well, then you might not need any supplements. But if you do, then these are ones I've found useful and I've used myself. So protein supplements, obviously, I utilize protein supplements mainly because I just want to ensure that I get my protein intake through the day, and it's very expensive to do it via eating food all the time. I would love to eat meat all day and just gorge myself out on proteins, but it costs a lot of money to do so. So protein powders are very cheap. It costs about 50p per shake, maybe even less with some brands, and that just then keeps it nicely cost effective through the week, but I'm also always hitting my protein goals. So it's great to get that muscle building effect, so it's important to do. Creatine is the most scientifically tested supplement out there, and again, anyone with any sort of credits will tell you that that is a supplement that is pretty much peer reviewed and can't be argued with. So if you want to increase strength and lean tissue, then creatine supplementation can be very useful, especially on strength cycles or anything like that. Whether you take it all the time or not is up to you again, but it is an important supplement to take in. Fish oils, okay, so with fish oil, obviously it's increasing your amino 6 and amino 3 fatty acids and things like that, so and they help with things like inflammation, so obviously soreness of the joints and everything else. Now inflammation is actually good in the body, again going a bit more scientific than we need to, but these help reduce it, which means you move better and feel better from there, and obviously it increases those healthy fats in the body. So it's a good supplementation to take, but not necessary unless you want to take it. Magnesium is one that I've actually recently been utilising, thanks to one of my athletes, Phil Skinner, for recommending that. He did studies on it in the past at university, and actually now it's being hotly tipped again. It comes about in stages, but magnesium is very good at recovery and obviously hormonally in the body as well. So it's a great supplement to start using, whether you take it in the form of sort of ZMA, which is the zinc magnesium sort of sleeping supplement that they bring out, or one that helps you sleep from there, or whether you just take it on its own. It's normally a sort of a good supplement to take, whether it's via a spray or pill form or whatever it is. And finally, the fifth one is just a multivitamin. So I take a multivitamin every day. Some days I forget, but generally speaking, get one in a day, and it just helps again by just getting in, minerals or things that are vitamins that I'm missing out on through the day. I don't know if I am or not, but it just, it's a safeguard from there. I can take that and know that I'm just getting some good minerals and vitamins inside me. So it's just a good supplement to be taking daily from there. But again, no magic pill. These work, but whether you want to do it or not is up to you. It's not a be all and end all. So we'll wrap it up from there, guys. So that is the 3 layers of awesome in terms of diet. This one's probably the longest one, though it's the least important, which is quite ironic, but obviously there's a lot to explain. I've tried to get 3 topics in one element from there, just for the peak work from there. But as long as you're controlling your calories, okay, and ensuring that your macros are fairly balanced, you will find you'll get the results. This stuff, as I say, is the cherry on top. But the most important thing to take from it is not to stick to any one system, any one dietary type, any one thing from there. Experiment, play around with it, see what works for you, and that will be the best result and the best start from there, guys. Just be awesome. Have a great weekend, guys. I'll see you next week. If you're still here for this video, thank you very much for watching the whole thing. If there's anything you'd like me to cover or any questions you have, then obviously hit the links below. And obviously, if you want to share this information out to the world or any of my videos, then obviously that would be great as well. Just be awesome, guys. I'll catch you later.